For 10 years, Bartholomew Thompson had reigned over the Oakshade Landing Homeowners Association. His rule was not one of overt aggression, but of 1,000 meticulously documented, soul-crushing paper cuts. He was the chairman, an iron fist wrapped in a cashmere glove, whose pristine Lexus gleamed under the regulated 2700K warmth of the community's lampposts. His lawn was a chemically induced, impossibly uniform shade of emerald, a living testament to his belief that nature was something to be tamed, manicured, and invoiced. His interpretation of the community covenants, a 3-ring binder thick enough to stop a door or a dream, was absolute law. Under his watch, property values were enviably high and resident morale was suppressed. The rebellion, as most great rebellions do, began with something small and seemingly insignificant. It began with a rogue squirrel. David Chen, a graphic designer with a kind face and a preference for comfortable hoodies, had moved in 6 months prior with his wife and 2 young children. Seeking a small joy for his kids, he installed a squirrel feeder on the oak tree in their backyard. It was a whimsical cedar-planked thing, a miniature picnic table complete with a tiny screw for a corn cob. To the Chens, it was a source of daily delight. To Bartholomew Thompson, it was an unlicensed, free-range rodent cafeteria, a flagrant violation of Article 4, Section 2B, the harboring or intentional nourishment of non-domesticated fauna. The violation notice arrived in a crisp, cream-colored envelope delivered by hand. It detailed the offense, cited the covenant, and levied a $50 fine. A closing paragraph written in Bartholomew's imperious cursive thinly veiled a threat about attracting undesirables, both 4-legged and potentially 2-legged. David initially laughed it off. He showed it to his wife, Anna, who did not. That evening at the community mailbox kiosk, the story spread. Martha, a retiree who remembered when Oakshade Landing was more about block parties than bylaws, shook her head. That man once tried to fine the Garcias because their son's chalk drawings on the sidewalk were not a pre-approved color palette. He sent me a notice because my garden gnome was aesthetically discordant, added a young father named Tom. That was the last straw. A small delegation, led by Martha, appeared at David's door that weekend. They goaded him, pleaded with him, and finally convinced him to run against Bartholomew for HOA President. He was the perfect reluctant hero, mild-mannered, reasonable, and wholly uninterested in power. He just wanted to be left alone to watch squirrels eat tiny corn cobs with his kids. Bartholomew's re-election campaign was a masterclass in petty tyranny. He weaponized the official HOA newsletter, turning it into his personal burn book. An anonymous, concerned resident contributed a piece noting that David Chen's fescue was, upon close inspection, a 1/4 inch longer than the mandated 3-inch maximum. A special report on curb appeal featured a grainy, zoomed-in photo of a single, defiant dandelion near the Chen's driveway, circled in menacing red. Whispers circulated at the community pool, originating suspiciously close to Bartholomew's lounge chair, about how the Chens had used Swiss coffee for their window trim when decorator's white was the implicitly understood, though not explicitly written standard David's campaign, in contrast was refreshingly powerfully simple. He and Anna hosted a potluck BBQ. The scent of grilled hot dogs replaced the usual sterile air of suspicion. Neighbors who had only ever exchanged curt nods over lawnmowers were now sharing coleslaw recipes and Bartholomew stories. He walked door to door, not with a clipboard and a list of violations, but with a friendly ear and a 6-pack of craft beer. He heard about the fines for leaving garbage cans out for 61 minutes post-collection. He learned of the outright rejection of a family's request for a small, 2-foot by 4-foot vegetable garden because it impacted the neighborhood's cohesive horticultural vision. He listened to the sheer terror people felt when submitting a new front door paint color for approval. His platform solidified into a simple, resonant slogan: less enforcement, more community. The night of the annual meeting, the clubhouse buzzed with attention thick enough to be measured with a yardstick, a Bartholomew-approved, of course, yardstick. The chairman, in a crisp navy blazer and a tie knotted with surgical precision, took the podium. He gave a polished speech about fiscal responsibility, asset management, and the ever-present threat of aesthetic decline. He presented slick PowerPoint charts showing a 7% increase in property values. He used the term fiduciary duty 4 separate times. His speech was flawless, impersonal, and cold. Then David got up. He wore a rumpled polo shirt and had a nervous energy that was immediately endearing. He didn't have a speech, just a few notes scribbled on an index card. He talked about the squirrel feeder. He talked about the potluck and about meeting his neighbors and finally learning their kids' names. He pointed to Martha and thanked her for her legendary potato salad. He mentioned the Garcia's son and his vibrant, now absent chalk art. "This is a neighborhood, not a corporation," he said, his voice gaining confidence. "Our homes should be a source of joy, not anxiety. We are neighbors, not assets. And I promise you, a few dandelions, a garden gnome, or the wrong shade of white are not going to tank our property values. But a lack of kindness and community just might." The voting was done by secret paper ballot. A neutral board member, the treasurer, was tasked with counting. She unfolded each slip and placed it into one of two piles. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the soft rustle of paper. Thompson. Chen. Chen. Thompson. The piles grew, neck and neck. With every ballot for Chen, a quiet ripple of hope went through one side of the room. With everyone for Thompson, a smug tightening appeared on the faces of his loyalists. It came down to the final few. The treasurer held up the last ballot, unfolded it slowly, and paused for dramatic effect. Chen. The final count. Bartholomew Thompson, 48. David Chen, 49. A collective gasp, followed by a wave of murmurs, swept the room. Bartholomew's face, usually a mask of smug control, cycled through disbelief, fury, and finally a shade of puce. "A recount," he demanded, his voice cracking slightly. "I demand an immediate recount." The treasurer, with painstaking deliberation, counted them all again. The result was the same. Defeated Bartholomew Thompson did not offer congratulations. He didn't acknowledge his opponent. He simply, silently, packed his leather-bound portfolio, snapped it shut, turned on his heel, and walked out of the clubhouse without a single word. The closing door clicked with profound finality. For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then, a single person began to clap, and it was followed by another, until the entire room erupted in a roaring cheer. David, looking utterly stunned, was swarmed by his neighbors, with handshakes, hugs, and claps on the back. His wife and kids pushed through the crowd to embrace him. The following week, at the first board meeting with David at the helm, the atmosphere was transformed. The chairs were arranged in a circle, not a tribunal. Coffee and donuts were served. David's first act as president was to personally draft a motion. It didn't just repeal the fine against his own squirrel feeder. It officially designated a small part of the HOA's landscaping budget for the installation and maintenance of a communal bird and squirrel feeding station in the Central Park. He read the motion aloud. When he finished, he looked around the table. All in favor? Every single hand went up. The motion passed unanimously. Outside the clubhouse window, a squirrel scampered up an oak tree, blissfully unaware of the revolution it had started.